It has most certainly been a year. 2020 sucks, to say the least. People have done lots of things to mitigate the issue of minimal social activities, and video games are a go-to for a lot of people. And video games, despite the shittiness of this year, have been amazing. There are all types of games for everyone: platformers, RPGs, adventure, horror. I could keep going. And as we get closer to the end of the year, people come together to decide their game of the year. People even look forward to the official Game Awards that celebrate the best games of the year from all different genres. The nominees this year are great for the individual categories and even for the overall Game of the Year. If I could pick a Game of the Year, I would obviously pick Persona 5 Royal. I mean, holy shit, Persona 5 Royal isn't just my Game of the Year, but one of my favorite games of all times. It has great animation, flair, stylish battle system, characters, music. Oh my god, the music. There is no other game quite like it. But sadly, it's not considered Game of the Year nomination worthy. Probably because it's just basically the original Persona 5, but again, with more content, which, fair. If I can't pick Persona 5 Royal for the Game of the Year, then the easy pick for me is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I've only played one Final Fantasy game, and that's the original Final Fantasy VII. I own both the PS1 and digital version on the PS4. It's just that great. And Final Fantasy VII Remake holds up that reputation amazingly. So let's take a quick look at what makes 7 Remake so great, and why I think it deserves Game of the Year. Final Fantasy VII Remake had a lot to live up to. The original game is one of the original pioneers of JRPGs becoming mainstream in gaming. It was fun, weird, mystical, and cool, and odd. The game also has some of my favorite video game characters ever, like Tifa, Cloud, Aerith, and Homeless Train Man. Cloud is one of my favorite video game protagonists. He's just a kid who wanted to become a hero like the great Sephiroth. Now, while that notion alone sounds like basic anime protag, he has so much depth. Most people who haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII probably think Cloud is this very cool, serious dude with a bad attitude. Which he is, but not for why you think. I fucking love that smile. Just as Cloud is one of my favorite video game protags, Sephiroth is one of my favorite antagonists in games. Everything about him just screams menacing. And he just looks badass. Dude fights with a 50-foot long sword with equally as long hair. Man uses an entire bottle of shampoo every time he bathes. Could you imagine having to buy an entire bottle of shampoo for every time you take a shower? So back to the topic at hand. When Final Fantasy VII Remake revealed that this remake was only part 1 of many remakes of the original Final Fantasy VII to come, people were a little worried about this, thinking that they were only going to get a part of the full game they should be getting. People speculated that this remake was going to probably be the first disc of the original game then. The original Final Fantasy VII was split up into 3 discs, in case you didn't know. This turned out to actually not be the case. The first part of these many remakes to come is only the events that take place in the first Midgar portion of the original game. How long is that like? Like the first 10 or 15 hours? Yeah, if you leave the game on when you go to the bathroom and take a poop multiple times. The original Midgar portion is only about 5 to 7 hours on the first disc, which is about 20 to 25 hours. That left fans kind of worried, to say the least. How much detail could they go into and flesh out into a full 40-hour game only from the first 6-ish hours of the original game? The answer is a lot. To get a good scope, the reactor in the first bar scene of the original game is about 20 to 30 minutes. In the remake, that was expanded to about 2 or more hours. The remake really adds more to the original story and fleshes out so many points and characters. And that's what the game is for the most part. It's a super detailed version of the Midgar section of the original game. And being honest, it makes sense. Everyone remembers their first go-through of the Midgar section from the original game. So it makes sense that the first part of the remake series focuses solely on this incredibly memorable and iconic city from the original game. Most of the time. So, like I said, the story is mainly just an expanded version of the original Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII. So the story plays out... Actually, let's start with what I think is the best aspect of the game, and why I would recommend it to anyone. The gameplay. Don't worry, the story for the most part is amazing, but we'll get to it. The original Final Fantasy VII's gameplay was a turn-based RPG, and had a little cooldown time for when you could use your next action, and it would fill up faster when your limit gauge was full. At first look, the remake looks to be a full-blown real-time action sort of RPG, which would be fine. But the people behind the combat system for the game didn't take that route. Instead, they opt for a little mix between the two somehow to make it feel like a mix between real-time action and turn-based gameplay. Somehow, they made it work, and it has an incredible amount of depth. The first thing you'll notice is that you have an attack button in the bottom left corner of your screen, which allows you to, attack. But there's also another command prompt at the bottom of the little screen that says Commands Menu, and has a little gauge with it that has 2 bars that can be filled called the ATB gauge. That is your bread and butter in this game. Your command menu is what allows you to use magic and your character's unique abilities. When you use the command menu, time is slowed to a crawl, so you can carefully choose which ability or magic to use. This is where the turn-based combat comes into effect. For one, slowing down time to think about which option to use so you don't mess up which target you're using your command on is great for keeping the pace going. And 2, you need to have a certain amount of ATB to use different commands. This is a lot like your little gauge you had to wait for to use your next action in the original game. Using regular attacks, rolling, and blocking are all done with separate buttons like a real-time action game, but that waiting for the ATB gauge to fill is definitely similar to turn-based games. Because using those commands are the real game changers in these fights, especially because of the new part of the gameplay they introduced called Stagger. Stagger is another part of the depth in this game. Getting the enemy's stagger gauge up causes them to immediately drop to the floor. When the enemy drops to the ground, that's when you really start laying the damage into them. You can even increase the multiplier of the damage you do to them when they are staggering. Filling a stagger gauge and how to do it is key to defeating the game's bosses and definitely needed when trying to beat the game on the very difficult hard mode. You discover the weaknesses for yourself by experimenting or using the scam material to help you. Because you need to use it a lot anyways for the missions this little scamp gives you. But if you want those extra cool summoning materia, you better complete those missions for him. But yeah, by the standard Final Fantasy fare, you use materia in this game you find lying around to use different magic. You get access to it by equipping them with your weapons and accessories. Now the really cool thing about this game, besides just setting out to be the most cool thing ever, is that you can upgrade your weapons in this game. After you use a weapon enough to get that weapon's unique skill, you can go back and still use your favorite weapon if you've gotten enough skill points to upgrade it. I mean, who doesn't like using the Buster Sword? Sword's got sauce. You can also play as the other characters in this game too, and they all have a different style of combat. Tifa is upfront and fast, Barrett shoots with his arm gun and is bulky, and Aerith throws these little balls of magic and excels at magic in general. It is so satisfying learning what the ins and outs of this game are and learning how to use them effectively. But that doesn't mean hard mode won't kick your ass on the first tries. No. Let's get back to the story again. This game gives so much love to characters that you knew from the original Final Fantasy VII, except Homeless Train Man, and characters that had little screen time, more depth and characterization. I never thought a character who was used in the original as someone who got smashed against the TV screen would be this quick-witted cool guy.
Why are you talking like we're not here?
Because you're not.
Clearly we are.
A big favorite for everyone is the characterization that Jessie got. She's this huge flirtatious girl who, like Biggs, has a very quick wit about her, who everyone fell in love with the day the game came out.
My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate? Just let go already.
But not more than when players were introduced to the 2 main heroines in the game, Tifa and Aerith. A running thing in this game is the sharpness of these characters. I mentioned Biggs and Jessie, but really thinking about it, everyone bounces off each other so great in this game. But back to our main heroines, this game gives them so much personality, and they are a joy to behold.
The Colosseum.
What the hell?
Get down!
Oh, you stupid! Wait!
Though they already had a personality in the original, this game really pushes their core traits, especially Aerith.
You worry too much. I'm not some princess who needs to be coddled. Shit.
They really wanted players to have a tough time picking Cloud's favorite gal in this game. Yes, pick Cloud's favorite gal. Just like how in the original, different actions and responses change how certain things play out in the game, including Cloud's affiliation for either Tifa or Aerith.
She's in great shape.
Is that really important?
Helping out people and doing side quests might benefit you later in the game. Or what dress should Tifa wear if she and Cloud were to go out for a hypothetical fancy night in the town? Or what might happen if you keep the team safe while showing off your epic motorcycle skills?
You failed the test.
What test?
It's not clear what affects what until it happens, so just enjoy your first playthrough and stick to your guns. I just want to add that I love this over-the-top scene where they took Cloud putting on a dress from the original Final Fantasy VII and made it this huge extravaganza where Cloud busts out the most serious of moves.
Don't ever be afraid.
But yeah, the game does a fantastic job on expanding the little time you had in Midgar in the original game, and for the most part, that's what the story boils down to. You even get chapters in the game that are completely new and add more to the game in the chapters. For the most part, spoiler warning right here. because I'm about to get into the meat and theory-ish part of this game. Just so you know, this isn't mandatory to enjoy the game to its fullest. Somewhat. You can skip right here to avoid the rest of the story spoilers in this game. I'll give you 7 seconds. So, like I keep saying, for the most part, the story in this game is just an amazingly detailed and expanded version of the Midgar section, which is what people expected when it was revealed it was just going to be the Midgar section from the original game. I sound like a broken record, but for the most part, that's what it is. But at the same time, it's not, and that's because of these Harry Potter Dementors. As Red 13 tells us, these are arbiters of fate.
Spurs. Perhaps best described as arbiters of fate.
They are keeping the destiny of the planet on its set course. So is this an excuse the writers can use to kill off or not kill off characters when they feel like it? I thought so by how it was going, and I thought it was a little dumb at first. That's until you realize that the destiny they are upholding are the original events that happened in the original game. Did Aerith go out of her way to talk to Cloud in the original? No? Then their goal is to keep that from happening. Did Cloud kill Reno in the original at the church? No? Then back up, Cloud. Did Aerith divulge the information about the Ancients and the bigger threat to the planet to the group in the original at Shinra HQ? No? Then it must be stopped. They are the big enemy in the game, and are probably somehow related to the big boss man himself, Sephiroth. Sephiroth appears super early in this game compared to the original, and only to Cloud. Many, including myself, believe that Sephiroth knows the future somehow, and this might be a completely different Sephiroth than the one that appears in the original game, and it's actually pointing to the fact that this might actually be Sephiroth from the original PS1 game, and
7 seconds till the end. But what will you do with it? Let's see.
When our heroes finally face off against these arbiters of fate, they get flashes of the destiny that the planet has in store for them. You see the famous Aerith's death scene and Cloud's mourning scene from the original game. You even see the actual ending of the original game flashed up in the group's head.
What the hell did I just see? A glimpse of tomorrow if we fail here today.
No, but that is your future. They even replicated the scene where Zack fights off against the Shinra group, but he won? Zack survived his encounter with Shinra? Then how does Cloud? This game is veering off to a different path than what the original game had. And personally, I'm all for it. I honestly think that it's very captivating. The next parts of the remake that come out have, might have set pieces from the original, but from here on out, I think it's going to be a completely new story. What really makes me think that is that the ending of this game ends with the same bit that the original game's ending had with Sephiroth and Cloud. I think the only problem this game has is that, in a way, it's like it's a sequel to the original game, and I think that's a bit of a problem. Many newcomers will come in thinking that they won't need to play the original anymore since they have this shiny remake with more of the story on the way when more remake parts come out. But it's not. It's very clear that this is going to be its own thing later down the journey. And telling people to play an older game to understand the story is a turnoff for a lot of people. So we all agree this game looks utterly fantastic, right? We've come a long way since the original PS1 days, and it pays off extremely well. From Barrett's beautiful eyes to the character's summoning magic, Cloud has never seen better days. He looks absolutely incredible along with the rest of his party. Their updated designs aren't just their original designs but in HD and 3D, but are newly added or slightly different. This game has some of the best cutscenes to gameplay I've ever seen.
Like I give a shit.
This game just has some of the coolest scenes I've ever seen in video games. Like, the choreography work in this game is some of the greatest I've ever seen. And I don't even mean just in video games, like, ever. This game has flat out some of the coolest shit I've ever seen, and the wildest. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, it's just cool. I mean, look at this. Sorry, that was the wrong footage. This soundtrack is amazing. It's easily the best video game soundtrack this year. Okay, second best video game soundtrack this year, but still a soundtrack that I like to put on in the background while I do something else. The amount of Let the Battle Begin remixes is actually quite impressive, but are all very welcome and sound great. Also, the new Tifa and Aerith tracks are also some of my favorites. This game is definitely a gem, a keeper for sure. It has the perfect blend of real-time action and turn-based combat, and the characters in this game are such a joy to watch interact with one another. I think the story is overall great, and I don't think the game has any low points really where I'm not enjoying it, except this.
Together, we can take on the world!
Okay. I do have one problem with the game, and that's the fact that I think it kind of expects you to have played at least the original game to fully understand the story. I say as to why in the spoilers, I won't say that what I said there here, but just know that I do think that bogs down the game a bit. I have played the original, so I have no qualms, but I think people who haven't will be feeling a sense of incompletion and out of the know if they decide to play it. But at the same time, I don't really think that's a problem really until the ending part of the game where it unfolds as to why. But overall, you still get these great characters with great dialogue and a gameplay style with tons of experimental depth. The amazing gameplay and characters alone sell this game easily. The story being great is just an added bonus on top, which it is, despite what I think of how the ending makes stuff feel. Plus, the comedy in this game is top notch.
No way.
It must have been a new breed,
How do you figure?
because they went for the stronger prey.
Cloud? Is that you? Oh my god, that makeup and that dress!
Nailed it. I know. Thank you. Moving on.
My pick for Game of the Year goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Longtime fans have been waiting forever for this game to come out, and I think it was worth the wait. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake or are getting something new and hot for the holidays, for Christmas, go with Final Fantasy VII Remake. It'll be worth your time. Trust me.
I miss it. The steel sky.